Hey everyone, Pugs here with 3 new reviews for y'all. Yes, today I'm covering yet another trio of episodes from Season 5, this time the very last trio, A Flea in Her Dome, The Donut of Shame, and The Krusty Plate. At least these title cards have a bit more synergy than the last trilogy, like god, that was so bad. But anyway, I'm almost sad that we've come to the last trio. These were so fun. I like the idea of varying episode lengths, and beyond special episodes, we won't be seeing this again for quite some time. So before I get into talking about this last trio, let me go ahead and say that as always, thank you all for watching today and for tuning into the channel in general. And now, let's just get right into it. The first episode of the 90 trio is A Flea in Her Dome. This is an episode that I've kind of always had a pretty good memory of, even ignoring the fact that I rewatched this one a few weeks back. I think it might be because this one has that weird, disturbing insect factor like Wormy, which catches your attention, or at least it catches mine. It doesn't have those iconic close-ups like Wormy does, and is not played for laughs the way Wormy is, but this episode is about bugs all the same, and that makes it more memorable for me. A Flea in Her Dome starts out in a rather spectacular fashion, with SpongeBob shrieking crying, and he is soon joined by Patrick. If you could not tell, the spectacular is sarcasm, because this is not exactly enjoyable. Also, these episodes where SpongeBob and Patrick are super upset that Sandy is gone are kind of undermined by the fact that Sandy is not very utilized as a character. Like, I hate to say it because that's my girl, but it makes one wonder why they're even crying when Sandy isn't seen all that much anyway. Like, by a country mile, she is the least used of what I call the big five: SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Sandy. So, yeah. Y'all know how I feel about that. I simply choose to believe that although we might not see her very much, SpongeBob and Patrick do hang out with her a lot off screen, which then makes this plot make more sense. Anyway, so this first part of the episode isn't all that entertaining, except for the little bit that Squidward appears. Man, and this season Squidward is having a lot of excellent minor/cameo appearances, like I'm loving this trend. I then get a little bit irritated when we get to the joke where Patrick doesn't know who Sandy is. You know, my problem with this isn't even that Patrick is immensely stupid, as I had said in my original review of this episode. My problem is that this joke isn't funny. This becomes a kind of repeated joke throughout the show after this, Patrick not knowing who people are, especially Sandy, but with the exception of maybe a couple instances, it's never really been that funny to me. It just kind of feels disrespectful. Moving on, the montage of SpongeBob and Patrick preparing the surprise is fun enough. I liked the welcome dome sign, I thought that was really cute, and then I loved how the bus driver cut SpongeBob singing short because I'm with him. When SpongeBob started singing, my eyes just about started rolling out my head. That bus driver is always hilarious, and I love how they almost always keep the same model for him. This whole first part of the episode, including when Sandy returns and starts scratching herself for an undisclosed reason, feels very slow and dull. And I can't say I'm a fan, but that doesn't mean all hope is lost. We still have the rest of the episode to pick things up. And things do indeed get more interesting once the flea reveals itself. Well, okay, so the thing is, this reveal feels very underwhelming. I mean, it's not like the flea could have been a surprise or anything given the episode title, and it's not like fleas are some terminal condition, but I don't know. I would have appreciated some more dramatics, especially because SpongeBob and Patrick have no experience with fleas, could have done a full Wormy. You know, now that I think about it, this episode is just Wormy, but if Sandy was there. Anyway, I did like the bit when the flea gets on Patrick and Patrick connects the dots with his bite marks. That was pretty funny, especially because the drawing of the horsey was kind of cute. And Patrick does, at least, bring the dramatics I was looking for, so that's good. Him pretending to turn into a vampire was hilarious, and then the flea starts jumping on everyone, and that's pretty enjoyable to watch as the trio have to share this one collar, although I start thinking about how a potentially easy solution to this problem could have been having the flea get on SpongeBob or Patrick, and then have them go outside. Obviously, I'm not actually upset the episode didn't go with this logical solution, because firstly, this show isn't logical, and secondly, if that happened, there'd be no plot. Once Sandy comes up with the also smart idea of putting the flea collar on all 3 of them, the fleas somehow start multiplying rapidly without a food source. Yeah, this episode is highly nonsensical even for SpongeBob SquarePants. We move on. Once the fleas multiply, we get lots of fun visual gags. This episode reminds me of this short story I had to read for a class where there were giant killer mosquitoes and swarms that would descend on people and kill them instantly. That story was pure nightmare fuel. But anyway, I love the second Squidward cameo we get in this episode with him being a power walker again, and I also love how he totally ignores SpongeBob and Patrick's pleading. Sometimes a man just needs to protect his peace. And then once Patrick gets fed up, even though he unfairly blames Sandy and SpongeBob, his rant is hilarious. Bill Fagerbaki once again nails everything about that. I also love that SpongeBob doesn't take Patrick's disrespect sitting down, the squabbling is entertaining, and then finally we have the solution I came up with a while ago, which is using water to get rid of the fleas. Love it when a plan comes together. I also think it's hilarious that somehow Sandy's tree dome can fit all the water in the ocean, and even though it's abrupt, I kind of really like how this episode ends. A Flea in her dome is fine. That's really the best way I can describe this episode in general. The second half of the episode really makes up for the bumbling first half, but that first half still is really not good, and the second half isn't this show's best material either, it's just entertaining. And that's why it's in my okay tier, where it comes in with a score of 6.7 out of 10. Next up is the Donut of Shame. Let me just say right now that this episode is a far superior version of Rise and Shine, because let's think about it, this episode is about Patrick going about some kind of activity in the morning before SpongeBob comes over, and this episode does this a lot better, probably because the plot is more than just what is Patrick up to in the morning paired with unfunny gags. I really like the mystery element that threads through this episode, as Patrick wakes up not knowing what happened the night before, us right there with him. It's a great setup and honestly feels like something you'd see in a live-action adult sitcom, since usually these kinds of plots are done after someone got blackout drunk. And speaking of that, I love that this episode is almost like a kid-friendly parody of that. The whole sequence of Patrick figuring out how to get the donut from SpongeBob is doing a bit too much, but it ends quickly. And although I expected to kind of really dislike the part of Patrick going through all this build-up to eat the donut, I actually found myself amused, especially by the whole gag with the plates. I also really liked the second flashback from the night of debauchery. See what I did there? And I liked that Patrick at least had second thoughts for a moment. Not to mention this will be the source of conflict for the rest of the episode, his guilty conscience, telltale heart style. And as I say that, let's pretend that this isn't the only story I know where a guilty conscience is the end-all be-all of the story. The rest of the episode is pretty enjoyable too. I really loved the whole bit with the angel and devil donuts, especially when the angel donut agrees with the devil one, and I love how the idea completely fails too. The shenanigans of Patrick trying to hide the donut are great, and I really liked the bit with the lamp. I loved the dramatics of Patrick's daydreams about what might happen too. Those were super entertaining. And then of course we have probably one of my favorite jokes in the show, or at least one of my favorite jokes in a while, with the attic, and I love that it happens twice. Patrick then confesses, and it warms my heart to see some real friendship between SpongeBob and Patrick, because some of these episodes, man, sheesh, but I won't go down that road. The reveal that the donut was supposed to be Patrick's all along was great as well, and then the ending bit with SpongeBob and Patrick sharing the donut was great, because yeah, that thing is nasty now, just like to love a patty. There really isn't much to say about the Donut of Shame, it being a short 7-minute romp with only 2 distinct segments, after all, and one of those segments is a collection of gags. This is a really enjoyable episode to watch for me. It's funny, and I love the whole atmosphere and the constant questioning of what exactly is going on here. It reminds me of The Secret Box, of all things, probably because of the location and some of the events, such as there being a secret of some kind, but I'm not sure. There is no doubt that this episode easily makes my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.5 out of 10. Lastly, we've got the Krusty Plate. Along with SpongeBob vs. the Patty Gadget, this episode is popularly regarded as the best of the Season 5 4-minute shorts. So now that means I have another contender for what could be my personal favorite of the 4-minute shorts. You know, it's kind of funny that this episode is so soon after the Krusty Sponge, considering their very similar titles. I like that this episode takes place entirely at night because we get some cool looking backgrounds, and y'all know how much I love those. The backgrounds get even better once things start going off the rails and we get all sorts of effects overlaid too. I also think that the plot of this episode is very fun and very SpongeBob SquarePants because he absolutely would go insane trying to get a spot off of a dish. Remember the beginning of Culture Shock? I love the dramatics about Mr. Krabs finding a spot because y'all know I love dramatics, and the joke about SpongeBob being left alone was hilarious. For as much as SpongeBob loves the Krusty Krab, he sure brings disaster to it a lot. This joke reminds me of the whole whirlybird incident referenced in Sandy's Rocket. And then, because this is a 4-minute short, the Krusty Plate is more a collection of gags than anything else, but I've never had a problem with episodes like that, and that's not starting here. I love all the various ways SpongeBob tries to get the stain off of the plate, and it lends us a lot of fun visual gags. This also reminds me of Wet Painters. And I love how SpongeBob pulls out a whole tank, and even better when he gets the Spotmaster 6000, and Tom Kenny's delivery and SpongeBob's little monologue really makes the whole thing. And then I love how over the top everything is once SpongeBob starts using not one, not two, but three different lasers slash cannons, and then crossing the beams, which is a reference to Ghostbusters, I think. Despite my siblings' love for that movie, I've never seen it. And then, of course, this causes spontaneous molecular distortion. Side note, I love how Mr. Krabs is able to discern exactly what's going on with all that scientific talk. Like, since when did you study quantum mechanics, Mr. Krabs? I love how Mr. Krabs is like, yeah, this is definitely SpongeBob's fault. And then, yay, a random explosion. Well, it's not really random, but you get my gist. The ending of the episode is great as well, but honestly, Mr. Krabs only has himself to blame. Clearly, SpongeBob is resourced enough to get a giant laser beam. Maybe don't leave him alone at your restaurant. I can't tell if I like the Krusty Plate or SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget more. I think the honor of best season 5 short to me goes to this one because I'm a sucker for over-the-top dramatization. I also think this episode spends its 4 minutes wisely and it really makes the episode feel longer than it is. But that's not a knock on SpongeBob versus the Patty Gadget because that episode does the same thing, especially with its rhyming structure. But whatever the case, this episode is definitely a worthy member of my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.2 out of 10. It's just too good. And it also makes me desire more and more 4-minute episodes. Why did they do so many? Why haven't they done any more? As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. So, I've already talked about this recently, but it just keeps being on my mind. But y'all literally give me so much motivation to keep these videos going. I'm in grad school now, and let me tell you, it's extremely overwhelming. I've got assignments out the ass, a job that takes up my time, and exhaustion down through my bones. So working on these videos are some hours that I could easily reallocate to something else, but knowing that I have an audience of y'all who like and want to see my videos, it keeps me going. So I really do appreciate you guys so much. And that's why I had so much fun recording the 300 subscriber special as well. Like, that was really fun. But in terms of closing thoughts for these episodes, I've really got none. I know this is a very short review, but there's really nothing for me to say about any of these episodes. They're all pretty solid, except for A Flea in Her Dome. I guess that's a little less solid, but I don't know. I'd call an okay tier episode solid, so it's also solid. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else I could really say, so I guess I'll just close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.